would like to introduce Maria
Good.
Palmer to It's a Foodie's World today on our podcast, and I'm really excited. She's quite the name out there, I've heard. So, Maria, I would like you to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Anmar, for having me on. So, a little bit about me in the foodie world. I actually, I think, was born a foodie. Grew up in an Italian immigrant kind of family. Both my grandparents came over from Italy at young ages. My father started a restaurant whenever I was 4 years old. And he started this restaurant in a very unlikely location for a restaurant during the 1980s in a small little town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania called McKees Rocks, PA. It was not known really for much of anything, but he wanted to make a name for himself in the restaurant industry. So he struggled heavily, but eventually got a really good review from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and it skyrocketed him into eventually becoming one of America's top 10 Italian restaurateurs. And this was during a time before social media, before podcasts. So to have a restaurant of that type of caliber be outside of the auspices of New York City, Chicago, San Francisco, it was quite rare. And we really enjoyed our restaurant life quite a lot. Everything fell as quickly as it rose, unfortunately, with a knock on my door whenever I was 20 years old, and the federal government was looking for my father. He was the subject of a federal grand jury investigation. And unfortunately, after a 3 year pretty intensive investigation, he pled guilty to tax evasion charges and served some time in federal prison. So, really, my story is kind of a very up and down roller coaster tale. It's good enough for a book. So, that's how most people now know me, as the author of On the Rocks, which is the story all about the rise and fall of my father in the restaurant industry. So that's how I touch on the foodie portion of life.
Well, I just started reading On the Rocks actually. I've been kind of really busy. I had a load of events and some big things going on. So it started out pretty well. So I'm excited to get into the book and read it because I'm a big reader. And as I said, I'm also a foodie. And so as a foodie, and you're living in where you're living now, food is really big, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
restaurants
So
and
I'm actually in
food and
northern.
the life of food has become really big, I think everywhere. But I know in your area that.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit, what is your favorite restaurant and why do you go there?
Oh my goodness. I am really big into the independent operators because I came from a restaurant family from an independent operator. It really just depends upon where I am. I split my time at the moment between northern New Jersey, just outside of the New York City area, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is obviously where my story started. So if I'm in Pittsburgh, I love this little hole in the wall restaurant called Vesuvio's, which is maybe about 10 to 15 miles west of the international airport in Pittsburgh. And it reminds me a lot of the flavor of my dad's restaurant before he hit it really big. It's just a very unassuming type of place. You walk in, you can come however you would like, in jeans or, a sweatshirt. It doesn't matter, but the food is just so authentically good. Everything is homemade. They do all of their own pastas and pizzas and manicotti and gnocchi and all of those like classic Italian favorites. So that's one of my favorites that nobody knows about. one here in the northern New Jersey area, if I don't want to go into New York City, which obviously has the breadth of every restaurant that you'd want to go to, right? But if I'm staying here in northern New Jersey, I really enjoy, there's a place called Artissimo's in Ringwood, New Jersey. And the reason why I like it is it's lots of immigrants that run it, Calabrian people, which is part of my heritage as well. It's gorgeous. So this is the type of place where you do dress up for a fancy Friday night. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but the quality of food, this is all about presentation and all about the freshest ingredients. And you are paying New York City prices in the middle of nowhere, but the quality that you're getting is New York City quality. And so I absolutely love that place. They are always doing really innovative seafood dishes and appetizers and really beautiful desserts. And it's just, I guess the two restaurants that I mentioned couldn't be more different, but they both really feed my soul, which as a foodie, as you know, Anmar, that's what we long for is a place that will feed our soul, that will speak to us on some level. And, a restaurant can be very different, but it can speak to us in very different ways. So that's why I wanted to highlight restaurants on both sides of the spectrum because they're both equally excellent and delicious, just in very different ways.
I do like that. I know what you're talking about. I live on the West Coast, so totally opposite side of you, and we are very big foodies here, close to San Diego, and I
Oh,
have
nice.
yes, I'm a fusion food person. I love the mixtures of food and people coming up with new things. So we have some really Michelin star places around me, so I love to go and eat there, especially French food, like you going into the Italian side. I
Mhm.
love the French food. Um, I don't know, is there a lot of French places out there around you guys, or?
Not so much here in this particular area, definitely in New York City. Oddly enough, I used to live in LA for like 10 years, so I'm very familiar with the area that you're in. One of my favorite places in LA that has now since shut down was on a side street in Beverly Hills during the early 2000s. It was called Michela. And it was a fusion restaurant, and the fusion was very interesting. It was French, it was Vietnamese, and it was Italian. And the combination of those three unlikely regions coming together, it was just really one of those places where every time you walked in, you were just curious, what is she going to do? What is she going to put on the menu? And every time I was thinking that it couldn't get any better, and it did. So I completely agree with you about some of the fusion places. There are places that do this incredibly well. There was also another place in LA that did sushi and pizza. It was more of like a takeout, that didn't go over so hot. But,
No, I can see.
taking some really fresh ingredients and a really good high quality chef, and you never know, what you might get. So I love that you just mentioned that.
Thank you. So let's go a little bit back to how you grew up and what was your dad having the restaurant? And I mean, you probably were in the restaurant a lot, spent a lot of your childhood there. Um, what was your
Sure.
favorite food or your comfort food that your dad would give you when you were there? I mean, it always interests me so much because comfort food is part of the soul of growing up. I'm from South Africa. I
Yeah.
grew up in Stellenbosch in the wine country on a farm. And my favorite food or my comfort food is called melkos. My grandma used to make that for us
Hmm.
on cold, miserable days early in the morning, and you would get up and it's just the smell of cinnamon and I can't even explain to you
Mm,
what it is, but it warms your heart when you would get up in the morning and you smell this and you're like, oh, this is going to be a wonderful day today.
absolutely. Food definitely has a way of warming your soul, right? And especially those really pungent spices like cinnamon, and the whole pumpkin spice realm of flavors with nutmeg and cloves and all kinds of. I agree with you. It just gives me like a nice warm feeling. There was so much to pick from in my dad's menu because he had 32 different pasta dishes that were on the menu all the time, and then he had a number of specials. So I would say my comfort food growing up, my grandmother did a pastina-based Italian wedding soup that I absolutely loved. It was just such a wonderful thing that, comforted me whenever I had a cold or I felt sick. But it was also part of all of our family celebrations. We would always start out with a hearty bowl of wedding soup with pastina and cut up hard-boiled egg and meatballs and spinach and escarole, and a chicken, really rich chicken-based broth, and also some chunks of white meat chicken too. It was just such a beautiful dish. But the one that I liked most from the restaurant, and you're right, I did grow up there. I did work there for much of my childhood. There was a special that we would have on occasion called Chicken Milano, and I still actually make it um, for my family. And I have it, if anybody is interested, I have it if you go to my Facebook page at Joe Costanzo, Costanzo, Prima Donna, Primadonna. And if you search chicken Milano, I have the full recipe, but basically it's medallions of chicken breast, sun-dried tomatoes, onions, capers, mushrooms, artichokes in a white wine and butter sauce over fettuccine. And it is just such a wonderful dish because of the different palettes of all of those flavors and the vegetables. And it's very filling, but in a way, if you're going to have a big pasta dish, it's also kind of on the healthy end. So that was always one of my favorite dishes and something that I still, if I am hungry and kind of craving something from home, I'll still make that.
It's beautiful. So you're a good cook, as I understand. Um, do you cook a lot at home for the family? Do you just stick with Italian food mostly? I know, I mean, if I'm at home cooking for myself or, um, for whoever comes and visit me, I always revert back to the South African food because it's just part of my background. And I always, well, I did ask a
Sure.
lot as well, can I make them this? Can I make them that? Because African flavors are very different. Um, but do you always revert back
Hmm.
or do you try new things or new recipes? Do you do a lot of fusion at home yourself?
I will try a new thing here or there. My day-to-day cooking is kind of sad because I'm very busy on my book tour. I also work part-time, but it's really like full-time because I do nonprofit work. So I'm very busy with that. And then I have two young children and a husband that travels, and I also travel for my job. So I don't have a lot of time whenever we're here because my kids are also at the age that I'm a taxi service. So a lot of my nights are spent making Kraft macaroni and cheese, to be honest. But I do a lot of cooking classes. I do events all throughout the country called Cook and Book. So we get together, we make a prima donna inspired meal, sit down for a nice book discussion and Q&A and a signing. And those events have been very popular. So With those, I'm making, rich marinara, tomato-based sauces, and then different types of pasta. I mostly make the ricotta gnocchi, which is one of my great aunt's famous recipes that I've been kind of passing down. But it's
And
just
is
a
that
very
also event?
fun yes, event. Yeah. Yeah, which is kind of fun. So I do a lot of cooking that way. I also do for my job, I'm a grant writer, but I also fill in some of the volunteer and service opportunities. And so we get together the third Friday of every month here in New Jersey, and we make lunches for 40 men that are staying in our men's shelter in Patterson, New Jersey. So I cook that way too. So really, I'm always a foodie. I'm always in the kitchen. I'm not always cooking elaborate meals, but I'm always trying to do something with the resources and the time that I have.
Well,
So.
it sounds amazing. So, this nonprofit work that you do, tell us a little bit about that. You are so versatile. It's amazing to just sit here and talk to you and listen to all the things that you are juggling at the same time with two small children. It's it's quite a feat.
Just start to feel good about myself again. And I found a nonprofit in California that's actually all throughout the state. You may have heard of it, called Get on the Bus, which
I do
takes
actually know.
children to visit their incarcerated parents for Mother's and Father's Day. So I actually met the person that started Get on the Bus, Sister Suzanne Jabro, and I started talking on behalf of the organization and eventually started running the organization. So that's where my love for nonprofit got started. And over here in New Jersey, I work for a nonprofit called St. Paul's Community Development Corporation. And essentially, what we do is we help to bolster people's basic needs. So we do things like food pantries, not only a food pantry at our facility, but we have food pantries inside of the schools that allow people a choice in what they want to bring home and make for their families. We have a men's shelter that houses between 30 and 40 men who are trying to get back on their feet. We have permanent housing for 5 women without children. We have a full service community school, which I kind of describe as the Google for schools. So we bring all of the programs and services inside of the school so that parents don't have to look far. So we have a health center with a pediatrician, a ophthalmologist, mental health, not only for the child in school, but for the entire family. We do parenting classes, GED prep, arts-based classes, just to really enrich our new coming families. We have an AmeriCorps program that we farm AmeriCorps members all throughout the county of Passaic. We also house AmeriCorps members at our agency. We do a bunch of workforce development. We do have a culinary program for folks coming out of probation and parole. We also do a lot with green jobs and construction. We do have a catering spinoff, which we kind of started a couple of years ago, as well as a construction company that's sort of our social ventures. I'm trying to think if we do anything else. I think that's mostly all we do. It's quite a lot, so it's hard to wrap my head around it, but I feel very lucky to be able to work from home before it was cool to do so and to contribute in the way that I do to get funding for these programs so they can run and have a greater reach to help more people. So that's what I do in the nonprofit world.
I applaud you for all of that. It's wonderful. I think that's so needed. And I think a lot of people um, that have the ability to help with things sit back and just watch the world go by them because it's easier not to get involved than get involved. And I love that you're so involved. It's beautiful. And thank you for that. Um, I have a question for you. Um, if you were
Sure.
what do you call it? If you were a superfood hero, if you had to pick something that you would want to be as a superfood hero, what would you want to be? I'm just throwing it in there because it's so interesting to hear what people
I
say.
think, yeah, I think I'd probably be an avocado.
Why would
And
you
the
be an
reason being
avocado?
is that the food is just so versatile. You can use an avocado, obviously, to make avocado toast, to make guacamole. You can also hide an avocado and you can use it in things like cookies, and baking. And it's just one of those foods that you don't have to shy away from the high fat content because it's all good fat content. It's good for your heart. It's filling and delicious. You can just toss it on a salad. You can chop it up and include it with a little lemon juice and some crab meat. You can really do a whole slew of things with an avocado. So I think that that's who I would be because I tend to get bored just doing one thing.
That is amazing. And I've gotten some really funny answers. The one person was like, I'm going to be a grape because I want to change water into wine. And I was like, wow, everybody has a different idea of what they want to be as a superfood. And I want to tell her, but a grape is not really a superfood. But
That's okay.
um,
When it becomes wine, I guess it is, right?
well, I assume she's a great wine drinker. um, so all these things, and you're so busy, and I loved at your book. When are you coming to Los Angeles again so that I have so many people that would love to come and join your food night, your culinary night, and your book and stuff like that. Um,
Oh, so I'm considering possibly over the summer. I'm trying to work a couple of things out. My brother and sister-in-law actually live in the area and we do owe them a visit, but I'm just trying to figure out, the kids' schedules. But I certainly will keep in touch. And if I do have anything that's coming up on the West Coast, I will alert you and you could also alert any of your listeners too, because I'd love to have any West Coast friends come and join, but that is definitely on my list of places to get to within the next year or so, for sure.
That would be really wonderful to see you in person here doing your thing. Um, I'm still awed by everything that you do. And your book, how long ago did you write your book? And how has it been going on the platform of getting your book out there for people to read and listen to your story?
Yeah. So my book project, I love talking about this because it was a struggle. And I think that people can relate to this whenever they're jumping in and trying to do something new. My book from start to finish took 17 years to write and started as a family history project. And I was lucky enough to partner with my former AP English teacher, Ruthie Dines, then now Robbins. And we got together during the pandemic and finished it and started shopping it around, which also was a very disappointing process. So, whenever you have a manuscript that you're trying to shop, and if you want to do it in a more traditional way, you have to find an agent. Well, agents are very hard to come by, especially during the pandemic, whenever everybody wrote their stories. And so we sent out, and I want to just tell people this because I don't want to sugarcoat what it is to try to jump into the publishing field. It's very ugly. We sent out 265 query letters, which described who we were, what the story was, why we should be the people that are writing them, and why it would be something that people would be interested in. Out of those 265 letters, 140 of them never even had the decency to get back to us. They completely ghosted us. Over 100 of those folks said thank you, but no thank you. And 17 people asked for a little bit more information, and only one person offered us representation. And with going into finding a publisher, it was much of the same story. The agent had sought out many publishers. We had a lot of close passes. People were saying things like, you can't really hang on the shelf next to Anthony Bourdain and next to Stanley Tucci. And I definitely took that as constructive criticism, but used it as a means of trying to fuel myself and trying to tell myself, listen, I'm going to turn this no into a yes for somebody else. And I thought, especially at the time that we were in our country and everybody being so divisive and oppositional, what On the Rocks is a story about hope and humanity. And whenever you lose everything, what is it that you gain and you take out of that experience? And I just had a funny feeling that that's what people needed at the time. So I kept on pressing forward. And the book finally found a publishing home after 13 months of being on submission, which is quite a long time. And it came out this past August. And whenever it came out, for the first 2 weeks, we were the #1 culinary memoir on all of Amazon. #2 was Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential, and #3 was Stanley Tucci's Taste. And I share this story with you because nobody, including myself, ever expected that. And the wonderful things that have come since then, I've been so blessed to be named as LA Weekly's top 15 rising authors in 2023. We were just featured this past holiday season in Forbes magazine as one of the top 6 gifts to get for the entrepreneurial spirited person on your list. I've been on TV. I've been on several national spots on radio, podcasts like yours. And it's just been such a blessing to see this continue to percolate around and to get the positive feedback from people saying, thank you for telling this story, because it was a hard one to tell, because we tell everything. We tell all of the good stuff. There's definitely some things for foodies in there. We talk about the restaurant industry, but we also talk about all of the hard stuff. We talk about the time that my dad was investigated and what it was like going to prison and how that was for our family and what that meant. So I think the diversity of the story is what's kind of carrying it forward in the market. And I'm grateful that it's found a home, and I'm grateful that people have resonated with it as much as they have. So thank you to all of you who have read it. Thank you to those who do read it. And if you do like it, one way that you could really help us is to just do a very simple review on Amazon or Goodreads. These things definitely make a big difference for an author, even if you say great book and give it a hearty number of stars. That's how indie authors become seen and heard.
That's very interesting. I'm a really avid reader. That's my downtime. When I am not working and running around, I pick up a book. That's my shutdown in life. And I never thought about it that way, that, hey, this book that I'm reading, it pops up and it says on my, sometimes I read a book in person or a Kindle, and it will pop up and say, hey, can you rate this person? And most of the time I skip it because I didn't even know that it's that important for you guys. So thank you for that information. In future, I
It
would
is.
really go out and make sure that I say yes or no or rate it as good as I can. But I am
Well, thank
really
you, because it does
admiring.
make a huge difference.
I have, when I was reading everything about you and researching you, I was stunned how I resonated with what an amazing woman you are, all the things you've gone through and the steps you've taken to just improve life, but for those around you. And it was a beautiful reading your bio. And I am
Oh, thank you
actually,
so much.
it's a pleasure. It's beautiful to see people like you out there. And I think a lot of times, when we are foodies, um, I think about the connection of food with people that you meet through your books, through cooking, through all the things you're doing. You make such a difference, and we all think the whole time. I go out and I do some of these kind of work as well. I work at a kitchen like once a month where I'm just giving out food. And I work at the old age home a little bit, just making, baking stuff and taking it over on those days because they're really lonely. And just food touches people. And if
Yeah,
you touch one person's heart, it makes such a difference, doesn't it? That
it
connection.
certainly does. And thank you for all of the wonderful, kind work that you're doing because it makes an impact. Whenever you deliver food for somebody, it was made with love. So you're giving somebody a little piece of your love and a little piece of your heart. So thank you for being who you are, Anmar. I can feel that energy and that spirit of all of the wonderful things and ways that you're helping people and helping foodies. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Um, so if people want to learn a little bit more about you, is there certain places where they can go? Where's your book available? I
Sure.
assume on Amazon. Where else can they find your book and information about you?
Absolutely. So people can go to my website, www.mariacpalmer, Palmer.com. And all of my links are up there. The book is readily available on Amazon, Target, Walmart, the Heinz History Center, many bookstores all throughout Pittsburgh. It's in the Barnes and Nobles, but it's also in Barnes and Noble online, anywhere. It can be ordered at any bookstore all around the country and even internationally. My Facebook page, as I had mentioned before, and Instagram is at Joe Costanzo, Costanzo, Prima Donna, Primadonna. And all of my contact information is also on my website too. And a list of all of my upcoming events. I would love people to drop by to one of my book talks or readings or cooking classes. I've got something for everybody. So hope to see you all at a future event.
Maria, thank you so much for coming today and sharing your story and a little bit about yourself on the foodies world. It's really been a privilege.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The privilege has been all mine. Thank you.
Thank you so much.